Hey everybody! On this episode of Gaming Collecting, I'm doing a solo episode this time around. But filling in for Alex, I have Matt Storm from Fun and Games and the Reignite podcast, and we are going to be talking about Seconds by Bryan Lee O'Malley, going over our thoughts on the book and just kind of just generally chatting on it. But anyways, guys, on with the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gaming and Collecting. Usually, I would probably be interrupted by my sister at this point, and some craziness would happen. But I'm flying solo for this episode. But I am joined by a wonderful fellow podcaster. I'm joined by Matt Storm from Fun and Games and Reignite. Matt, how's it going?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited to be here on the infamous or famous Gaming and Collecting podcast, which is actually the first of your podcasts I heard of. Well, also because 3DO hasn't been around as long, but like I remember hearing this first, and I think it's through Dave Jackson's Discord that I listened to a few episodes. Went, oh, this is pretty awesome, and got to chatting with you. And so I'm excited to now be officially on the show. It's exciting.
It's actually kind of crazy. I think our first interaction that I really remember was actually, if you remember the old co-op server that's sadly defunct these days.
Yeah.
I believe we were actually partnered up during the Secret Santa because I had sent over the Nornery games, I believe.
That's right. I do. Yeah. The reason I own the Nornery games is because of you. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. I still post in that server, but it just doesn't seem as active anymore. But yeah, man, I had forgotten about that. Yeah. I still need to play the Nornery games. I finally downloaded 999 through totally legal means onto my 3DS. And so I do plan to play it. I think Jeff finally played it very recently and loved it. So
nice.
Definitely interested. I love those games. Like I played half of Danganronpa and fell off just because I got distracted by other games. Like I like visual novels. I like mysteries. There's too many video games. And so I just get distracted and then never go back.
I hear you there. I guess before we start, would you like to shout out your shows real quick?
Sure. I will try and keep it brief. Someone who has 4 podcasts will understand, or 3 podcasts. No, 4. Wait, how many podcasts do you have now?
3 technically. On 3DO, we do a little side thing called 3D Owned, which is
right, yeah.
Which is still technically 3DO, but it's just we talk about non-3DO games.
That's true, yeah. I mean, you only have a limited library. Eventually, with the 3DO, you will run out of games. Yeah, so I do 2 video game podcasts. One is Fun and Games, which is a broad topic-based discussion podcast. If you've listened to any of the episodes that we've done with Bill, which there are at least 2 to this point, there will probably be a third when we eventually cover the 3DO, but we've done 2 console retrospectives with Bill, which were a lot of fun. But basically, the show focuses on me and Jeff, either with a guest or without, talking about some kind of topic in video games, whether it's a retrospective or talking about is grinding in games good, or interviewing developers, composers, social media managers, basically having broad and interesting conversations about video games. We have a sub-series within that feed that Bill's also done called Side Quests, where you talk about a game you love and why you love it. It's more of a monologue solo show that I edit and produce and occasionally guest on, where someone just comes on to talk passionately about a game they love. Bill and I, just off the air, we're talking about Tales of the Abyss, which Bill did an episode on quite a while ago. And yeah, so that's Fun and Games. I do that with the incredible Jeff Moonen. And then Reignite is a play-along podcast that started as just an excuse to replay the Mass Effect games. Me and my co-host Frankie Bradley Lestrange wanted to play through Mass Effect, but play the games as if we were Commander Shepard and make choices as if we were Commander Shepard, and then discuss why. And of course, more importantly, which aliens we would romance and which were the hot ones. The correct answer is all of them. And after we did the original trilogy, then we did Andromeda, which I had never played, but Frankie had, and Frankie shepherded me, get it, through it, which was a lot of fun. And now we're doing the Dragon Age series. So we did Dragon Age Origins and Awakening. Now we're in Dragon Age 2. And basically, it's an excuse for me and one of my best friends to get together and talk about a series of games that we love and why the choices matter. We often are comparing them to real life. It's kind of a shame that Dragon Age is less prescient these days as, the Templars and overwhelming city and governmental forces restricting what people can do. More current than we would like it to be. But yeah, and so that's Reignite. And then I'm also, when I have free time, a Twitch streamer and a DJ and a bunch of other stuff. But those are the two main shows that I do.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be sure to put those in the description of this episode. So for this episode, I always joke saying we're moving away from the main topic of GNC, but let's face it, GNC is barely about gaming or collecting half the time. For this episode, this actually kind of came on a whim because me and Matt had been chatting about it in Matt's Discord server when I posted I picked up the book Seconds by Bryan Lee O'Malley. And we kind of joked we should do an episode on it, which pretty much became what this is. So I guess to start, obviously, I know this book is primarily known for being by Bryan Lee O'Malley, and I know you are a huge Scott Pilgrim fan. I was curious, like, how did you get into Bryan Lee O'Malley's work?
So it's funny. I took a very backwards route than a lot of folks who have loved Bryan's work. When the Scott Pilgrim movie came out, I had known nothing about it. It was starring Michael Cera, who I liked. I liked a lot of the cast members, like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Chris Evans, Brandon Routh. And so I was like, oh, this looks fun. And like, the unfortunate truth about that movie and why it didn't do well until like after it was like on DVD and stuff is because the trailers for it were so terrible. Like they barely showcase what the movie is really about. But I was curious enough because I like Michael Cera that I was like, oh, I'll go check it out. It seems fun. And then ended up becoming absolutely obsessed with the film. I loved it. I became obsessed with Edgar Wright, who I'd known for Shaun of the Dead, but hadn't made that connection. And then went back and watched his other films. I'm now a giant Edgar Wright fan. And so I really love that movie. And so after seeing it like the second time in theaters, I went, all right, I've got to read the comic. And so I went to the local bookstore in my mall in Staten Island when I was still living there and like just immediately wanted to buy all the volumes. They only had the first two, so I bought them. And then I went back like a week later. They only had 3, 5, and 6. And so I bought those. But then when I hit 4, I couldn't read it because I didn't have it. So yeah, I ended up becoming obsessed with Bryan's work and Scott Pilgrim because of the movie. Loved the comics. Loved the video game that came out at that time as well, which is now also re-released. There's a new video game on the horizon, which is really exciting with new like authorship by Bryan Lee O'Malley, a new story written by them. And so yeah, I just kind of became obsessed since then. And then yeah, when you posted that you picked up a copy of Seconds, I had gotten I do a book swap with a bunch of friends every year, and everyone just brings a bunch of books, puts them on our friend's bed. We all like sift through them, and then whatever doesn't get taken back gets like donated to like a book charity or a library or whatever. And I saw this and went, oh, Bryan Lee O'Malley has another book. Because this Seconds came out after Scott Pilgrim, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know this existed. So I just picked it up sight unseen without even reading the blurb on the back. Like it didn't matter what it was about. I took it from that book swap. And so I've had it since. And so when you posted that photo online about acquiring a copy, I went, oh, I have that book. Wouldn't it be fun if we did a podcast about it? Which is, famous last words, because now here we are.
It's actually kind of similar for me because not the movie, but I actually got into Scott Pilgrim 100% just because I saw the video game and I was like, that looks really cool. Back in the early days, I think when it first came on PSN way back when, and that game is like really addictingly fun, even though it's brutally hard if you don't know what you're doing at first. But I remember after I played through the game, I was like, what is this even based off of? And I, of course, discovered, oh, it's a comic series. And I was a casual comics fan by that point. I had fallen off of DC because DC was in the New 52 by that point, and I lost interest in all that stuff. Plus, I was a high school kid at the time, and I could barely afford anything. But I went to our local comic chain, Newbury Comics, and they had similarly the first 2 volumes, so I grabbed those, the original black and white prints, and ended up reading through all of them. Like, I think volume 4 is still my favorite to this day.
Same.
And then of course, when the color versions came out, I had to have those because I had to see it in color. My favorite part is the joke where they make the joke about Ramona's hair if that's her natural hair color. And I'm like, this joke doesn't work in color anymore. um, but I remember all of that, and I always remember around that point was 2014 when Seconds came out. I remember seeing Seconds on the shelf all the time. And I was always kind of like, oh, he did another book, and I kind of like was curious, but I never had picked it up until I had watched a year ago. I'd seen it was like a old YouTube, it was a YouTube series talking about comic art, and they showcased a spread from Seconds, and I was like, oh right, that book. And I was like, kind of like the spread like really intrigued me because I'll show it later in the episode when we get to it. But there is some very interesting page layouts in this book, and that one intrigued me enough that I was like, I really got to sit down and read that. So of course, go on Amazon. I'm like, oh, it's on sale. Nice. Oh, and Lost in Sea's on sale too. So I just grabbed both of those.
Amazing.
Still gonna read Lost in Sea at some point, but I finally sat down and read it, and it's good. It is a very good book.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I'm not surprised. I really like Bryan's writing a lot. It's why I think I gravitated towards Scott Pilgrim. And I was like, within several pages, I was hooked. And I'm someone who struggles to read. I'm sure some form of undiagnosed ADHD or whatever, but like, I have trouble focusing on the page. I prefer audiobooks. And with comics, even though it's a lot less words, I still feel that kind of mind wandering. But whenever I read Bryan's stuff, whether it's Scott Pilgrim, which I can devour like all 6 volumes in a day, this book, like I read it over 2 days, but it was like one night and then the next day, like it wasn't even full 24 hours. There's just something relatable, and like there's an even flow to his writing that just like kind of sucks me in. It just kind of pulls me through, and I just want to know what happens next.
Yeah, I read it actually. So I read it initially a week ago because actually, for some reason, my brain got screwed up and thought we were supposed to record this a week ago. But I reread it yesterday. I actually read it while I was watching the NASCAR race. Because let's face it, you can only watch cars go in circles for so long. So I kind of was like glancing between this and the book, and I got through it in a sitting because this book hooks you very quickly because it starts in one place and you don't really know where it's going, and then it completely goes a completely different direction that I wasn't expecting, and it's got a lot of twists and turns throughout, which I found really fun.
Yeah, it's a compelling story that like it has a cold open that a lot of these kind of in media res books where someone has an existing life. I mean, Scott Pilgrim starts a very similar way, right? Like Scott's at practice and they're talking about his new girlfriend, and like you don't have any of the context yet. You just have what's there. And this starts the same way, right? It starts in Katie's bedroom. We see Liz, though we don't know Liz's name at that time, for the first time, the dresser, and you're just like, wait, what's happening? And then we're like convinced she was having a dream, a nightmare. What I like about this book versus Scott Pilgrim is it does a conceit. Scott Pilgrim has a narrator, but the narrator doesn't interact a ton with the characters. In the TV show on Netflix and in the movie, there's more of that. It's more of like an omnipresent voice. Whereas here, the narrator is her in her monologue, Katie's, and she fights with it a lot, which I thought was really funny. It's a great device of like the narrator would say something and then she would react to it like, no, I'm not doing that. And even sometimes in front of other characters, they'd be like, who are you talking to? And so I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a fun little device.
Like when I started reading it, actually, I kind of got attached to Katie in a way because she is very similar to Scott in a lot of ways. The only difference is, unlike Scott, who's kind of like to the point of like the whole point is that he's kind of like a mimetic loser.
Yeah.
Throughout the thing, Katie is successful. She just doesn't have her shit together. At all. Which is an interesting dynamic, I'd say.
Yeah, Bryan's really good at writing relatable characters that are not perfect. Now, I mean, like Scott, I love Scott Pilgrim as a character. I love that book, but Scott Pilgrim's an asshole and he's not a good person basically until the end of the book and the end of the movie. And even at the end of the book, not as much. Like the movie is a shorter story. It's, more condensed. And so they want that heroic arc for the character. So he kind of redeems himself in the movie more than he does in the book. But basically, if you relate to Scott Pilgrim at any point before the end of either story, you're the asshole. which is hard for some people to realize. Whereas here with Katie, it's similar. Like, she is successful. She has a restaurant. She's working on a second one, but she's still an asshole. Like, she is not nice. She is selfish. And like, of course, that those flaws instantly make her relatable, because you're like, oh, well, I can see, either you see those flaws in yourself or you know someone like that. Like, she's an instantly relatable character because she's not perfect. It's one of those things that, like, when you're writing slice of life versus superhero stories, and even with superhero stories, right? It's why Spider-Man's one of the most popular comic book characters in existence, because he's relatable. He's a dork. He's clumsy. He screws up, right? And so I think, like, especially screw up characters who don't have their shit together, I think are relatable for most folks at any point in their life. For sure, me in my early to mid 40s, when I still don't have I have my shit together more than I did in my 20s. Jury's still out on whether I wholesale still have my shit together or not.
That's like, it's actually similar, because like my favorite comic book character of all time is Wally West, the Flash.
Sure.
And I always say, like, Wally West's story from like the Mark Waid run all the way till where he is now, it's very interesting seeing him go from kind of a, I mean, let's face it, when Wally West first starts out as the Flash, he is an asshole. Like a player essentially, and he goes from going to that to becoming a hero who ends up meeting love of his life, starts a family, has all these great friends. DC had to ruin it for a couple of years, but now he's back. And he's currently like living his best life, and he's one of still my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah.
But it was fun seeing him go from that progression and truly developing, which is something that I think Bryan does very well in these books. I actually wanted to point it out because I found the page. One of the page that really interested me in this book is actually this spread right here.
Oh yeah, it's so good when you see the basement for the first time.
Because there's barely any text. There's some exposition text in both corners. And then you basically, the way you interpret it is basically you just kind of, you decide how you want to interpret it. You basically look and see all the different things going on and all the different, how much life there is in this tiny world, in all honesty.
Yeah, it's something that Bryan's done in both of his books that I've read, because Scott Pilgrim also has those 2-page spreads that are either just like a really epic scene, or it's trying to showcase a space. Like, I think of the shot, I believe the shot of the first time you see Wallace in Scott's apartment is a 2-page spread, and like in the movie, it shows all the things that Wallace owns and then like the one thing Scott owns. It adds impact, I think, giving that kind of a space. Also, like, a lot of the pages, like, there are several pages in this book that are just one thing happening on one page, or 2 things happening on the one page, right? They don't do like 6 or 8 panels. Some pages will have multiple, but for the most part, it's like between 2 and 4 panels on a page. So you can really see the art. It's nice and big and readable, and it's not like overcrowded or unintelligible.
Yeah. Honestly, like, one of the things I love about, Bryan's art is he has this super like unique, it's like almost anime style, but it's like not quite like all the way there, where it's kind of like a weird in between. Like, all the characters are they're like kind of like super deformed, but like they have that really like cutesy like big eye look to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he draws his characters, they all have very distinct like looks to them, which helps a lot.
Yeah, it makes their expressions really readable. They're really expressive, to repeat myself for a sec. And so, like, for sure, I think it's with intent. I mean, it's without a doubt influenced by anime and nerd culture, for sure. I mean, again, video game references abound in a lot of Bryan's work, but also just, I think it's like the old sprites in the old 16-bit era. Like, I think of Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. Like, the reason those games can be so emotive is because the sprites are like, their faces have these exaggerated features, so you can really see when they're freaking out, or they're happy, or they're excited, or they're scared, or whatever. I think that kind of readability really helps convey emotion in fiction like this.
So one thing I really find interesting about this book's plot is essentially it kind of follows the whole the idea of like the butterfly effect.
Yeah,
where one of the main plot points early on is Kate. So the main plot is Katie is starting a new restaurant. She started the restaurant Seconds, and she wants to now start a second one on her own as a half partner rather than just being the head chef. And as such, she's kind of in this weird limbo period where she's not technically in charge at Seconds anymore, but she's still kind of living there,
Yep.
freeloading essentially, while her other restaurant is being built. And it's kind of a back and forth thing where you start to realize the other restaurant's not going exactly as she had planned, and it's kind of there's a lot of stress in her life as she's also dealing with her own relationships. Like we end up finding out that she had a long time ex that returns kind of to her life early on in the plot, and you can tell she's still struggling with that a lot. But she's also has a thing going on with the new chef at Seconds. And the first major thing that happens is one of the because she's distracting everybody, because she's kind of aimless at this point. She doesn't really know what to do with her life.
Right.
She ends up causing an accident that causes one of the employees there, Hazel, who's my favorite character in the book by far.
She's great. Yeah,
I love her. She ends up getting burned by oil, and she gets taken to the hospital overnight. And then we get kind of like the main running thing through this is Katie discovers this notebook and a mushroom in one of her drawers, and she gets a little note card that basically says, write your mistake, eat mushroom, go to sleep, or something like that. So she writes, basically she basically undoes what caused the accident. And then we get the kind of main gimmick of the story, where there's these different like redos essentially, where she in her dream she will basically redo the scene, but will avoid the mistake that basically caused all the problems, and then she'll wake up the next morning completely not realizing she's changed the universe.
Yeah, and then the way the comic goes from there is, because obviously she will then use this to undo a lot of mistakes. Every like section starts with like the word revision and the number, and like it gets into the double digits as she continues to try and backtrack and change things. And it's this basic relatable premise of like, if you could go back and change something, would you change it? If it would, and would that make your life better? Right. And it plays on that concept, especially when you're dealing with an insecure, selfish, kind of worried screw up of a character. Like, of course she's gonna want to go back and change things, because she doesn't want to be frustrated. She doesn't want to feel like she's in a dead end, and she wants to do whatever she can to, like, quote unquote, right the ship, or what she thinks is righting the ship.
And I love too, because it does the classic like time travel butterfly effect thing, where a lot of times once a person discovers they have this ability, they immediately abuse it.
Of course.
Because some of the things Katie does make sense. She's trying to fix things or change things for what she thinks is the right reason. But then other times it's like, I shouldn't have got too drunk that night, or I shouldn't have done something stupid the one night. Like sort of like minor things like that. And it progressively you start noticing I'm blanking on her name. What's the spirit's name?
Liss.
Liss is getting very frustrated because she early on makes a point of saying you only get one, but Katie being Katie's like, no, I'm going to take as many as I want.
Yeah, it's she thinks that she knows what's best, even though it's clear she has no idea what the hell she's doing. No.
Because like it ends up being a case of like things. What I find funny is like every time she makes a change, things progressively start getting like they're initially better, but then she realizes, no, this is actually worse in a lot of ways. Like one of my favorites is early on when Liz is like basically telling her to stop abusing the magic. She basically tells her to leave her alone, and she takes the mushrooms for herself, which then Liz in retaliation just rearranges her room and completely screws it up, which later then leads to this amazing scene where Hazel comes up to visit and she's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I like the layout. She's like, the bed is in front of the door. Like,
yeah.
It's just so funny.
And I like how they use like, so this list is this like house spirit that through this developing friendship between Katie and Hazel, discovers like how to appease, why Hazel has this like need to like tidy up at the end of the night and leave these offerings for supposed house spirit. It's like a superstition. And when Katie then, after a few iterations, realizes, no, this thing is real and I need your help. I know you said you do things by the book and there's no book, but actually I need help. And one of my favorite scenes is when she brings Hazel to try and see Liz in the room. Hazel, of course, can't see her. And Hazel's like, and Katie's like, what do you mean? She's right there. And so then she does something to piss off Liz. Liz rearranges the room again. And even though Hazel can't see her, Hazel is now somewhere else. And so then understands, oh, this thing is real. Even though I can't see it, I felt that. I experienced that, which I think is really funny too.
There's a very fun scene later on too, where after a few more revisions, they're hanging out at Seconds. They're both drinking wine and just basically just hanging out. And they're watching what Liz does during the night, and she sees her eat the bread. And then there's a point where Hazel leaves her a new like sweater to wear, and Liz, rather than put it on, eats it. Which is just hilarious to Katie, and Hazel's very confused.
Yeah, because Hazel can't see what's happening, but Katie thinks it's hilarious and is watching all of it.
We also got the return of the classic bread makes you fat joke.
Yes, that's something that Bryan does in this book that I really love, is that there's a throwaway line about bread making you fat that is obviously an homage to Scott Pilgrim, but also in many scenes there's a fantasy scene early on where Julie and Stephen Stills are in the background. There's an actual restaurant scene later where Ramona and Scott are in the restaurant, and then we even see Stephen and his boyfriend Joseph later in the book as well. And I just love that he put these characters in his cameos. There's no interaction. It suggests that they exist in the same world, but they probably don't. It's just more, I can draw these characters and I know you know these characters, and so I want to put them in. Like when Julie and Stephen were in the fantasy, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. She's like dreaming or like fantasizing. So like, it's not real. They're just random people. But like later on when things are going to shit, like really going to shit, Scott and Ramona are in the restaurant, but also this book gets timey-wimey and multiversey, and so it could actually be them. We don't know, right? Like because of where the narrative goes, could be them, couldn't be. But for me, it's just a fun cameo from characters that I love from a different book.
I legit, my first reading, did not notice Scott and Ramona, and then the second reading, I was like, wait a minute. I saw them right away. One little thing too I noticed during the bread makes you fat joke. If you look really closely on the bottom of the page, Bryan actually wrote in parentheses, sorry, right below it, which I didn't notice at first. And I looked again, like, wait a minute. Like he's acknowledging it at this point.
Yeah, that's really funny.
His writing has little subtleties in it that I just love.
Yeah, it feels like actual conversations you'd have with your friends. It feels down to earth. Like there are plenty of people who can write stories that feel like average. I guess what I mean is like slice of life, and like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and like there are slice of life moments in superhero comics that sometimes feel authentic and sometimes don't. But what I love about comics like this, where there's still a supernatural element, there was in Scott Pilgrim and there is here, but it doesn't change the writing. There's still no superheroes or supervillains. It's, well, maybe technically, but like there's like the larger than life stuff happening doesn't change the writing. The writing is still down to earth, moment to moment, slice of life, just moments in these characters' lives, and makes the characters immediately feel more relatable.
Another thing too with this book is, so I believe this was his first book to be done entirely in color the first time around.
Yes,
because I know Scott Pilgrim later got the color versions, and then I believe Lost in Sea is also now in color. I think the version I have is a color version as well. But this book was made from the get-go in color, and it's very interesting how the colors were handled, because like they're very like, they've got a very like kind of a like muted, like almost sepia tone feel to them at times. But then when we go to the revisions, what I find really fascinating is they're like an even more muted sepia tone, kind of to like act like they're sort of a like this one, for example. It's like almost it kind of to symbolize it's kind of a like a dream sequence that's actually reality.
Well, it's also got that red hue because a lot of this stems from a red tree that we see early on in the book and the red dresser, which I didn't make that connection. That's very obvious until way later in the book. But it's a similar kind of red tone that's now a wash over the entire revision until the revision catches up to kind of current time, because the revision is something in the past has changed the recent past, but that recent past change affects a lot of stuff up until the time that Katie is currently inhabiting.
Another thing too, I completely did not see the first time around, and I kind of like missed was at one point after so many revisions, like things are starting to get really messy.
Yeah.
Liz makes a point of saying, like, bringing up how Katie brought an uninvited guest, and I was like, when did this happen? I was like kind of confused. I completely forgot about the cauldron and the fact that she dumped the ash into the earth below the below seconds. So when I'm like sitting there, because at first, like, I thought, because progressively as she starts after the point where she dumps the ashes in the basement, there are points where every revision, like this weird, like black kind of like shadow starts emerging from the mushrooms.
Yep.
And at first I was just like, oh, is it because she's overusing them? Like I was kind of
that was my thought too. I was like, oh, is this like a evil dark version of her because she's abusing her power? Which, like, yes and no, but like that wasn't the only like that wasn't the cause of it. It was because that cauldron got dumped into that space. It's funny too, because when she dumps it, I didn't think twice about it. I was like, oh yeah, she's just like emptying out this thing that she wants to use for the mushrooms. It didn't like I didn't make that connection at all till I got towards the end.
Because they even foreshadow it right before that when they make the joke at, unfortunately, Hazel's expense, because she's always the butt of jokes in this book. They're like, it's a witch's cauldron. Hazel, you look like a witch, and it cuts to the scene of her she's green and like a witch. And I'm just like, that poor girl, she did nothing wrong.
Yeah, you leave her alone, you jerks.
I do love that they do develop a genuine friendship throughout the book, even to that depressing point later on where she straight up disappears because she gets erased from existence.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that so there every time Katie revisions time, everyone doesn't remember the previous time, which they'll explain later why. They just remember this new revision. But Hazel every time remembers Katie and believes everything Katie's talking about, and in every timeline, in every like revision of the time, they're still friends because of that initial moment after the burns that then didn't happen, but they became friends. That friendship stays consistent, and I love that too. This idea that friendship defies time and space a little bit is a really lovely sentiment.
It's also interesting too because like one of the other messages that this book really tries to like portray is the whole idea that like be careful what you wish for, or sometimes what you think is perfect is not actually perfect.
Yeah,
because one of the first, like, a lot of the early wishes are mostly minor things, like she's undoing her dumb mistakes throughout the day. The first major revision she has is where she decides to change it so she never split up with her boyfriend. I'm forgetting his name.
Max.
Early on, he looks like Lucas Lee.
A little bit, yeah. He's got that strong jaw, and he like always has ladies hanging on him, and like seems like the womanizer type a little bit. Like he seems sweet once we get to know him as a character, but like there's this image that's projected on him, which I think also is part of us seeing the world through Katie's eyes. But yeah, they broke up because when she wanted to spin off into a new restaurant, she wasn't ready to commit. He wanted to move in together. She didn't want to. She also didn't want to leave the attic above seconds because it was cheap and she was trying to save money. And so she revises that so they end up to staying together. But then as she does things like that, then other things don't match. Like when she talks about her restaurant, he gets upset because what Katie doesn't know is in that timeline, it's their restaurant. They went on it together. And then in one version of the later revisions, it's not even their restaurant, it's his restaurant because he had done all the work because she was doing whatever else, right? And I like that no matter how hard she tries to make it quote unquote perfect, it isn't, even to a point later where she wakes up in bed crying and he tries to comfort her and she says, "You're going to leave me," or like, "I screwed everything up." And he's like, "You didn't screw up anything," because he doesn't know. He doesn't, like, no one else is remembering the revisions except her and sort of Hazel. I think it's more Hazel trusts Katie and Katie fills Hazel in, and like the stuff they're talking about makes sense. And I think some of the revisions still have that commonality of them being friends, even when it revises, even though a ton of other relationships change. And I just think it's interesting, like how they show, even when you're getting X right, A or B may not be right because you can't have everything.
Yeah. Like one of my, the biggest ones is when they decide to change which restaurant they purchased, going from the really in bad shape one to this smaller one that was in better shape. And when she sees this one that's almost completed, she's actually disappointed because it's nothing like what she wanted, which makes sense because it wasn't what she wanted.
Yeah, I think also what you want changes, right? I think a lot of the revising stuff here is like what you want in a moment doesn't mean it'll be what you want forever, or even what you want forever may not be turn out the way you thought it would. And so a lot of those variables come to pass, like whether it's seconds changing or this restaurant that she bought changing, the name of it changing from Lucky's to Katie's to a bunch to
MX2.
Yeah, MX2, like all of that stuff.
Oh no, MK2.
MK2, right,
MK2.
which is probably a Mortal Kombat 2 reference also, if I had to guess. And like all of those things, it's like no matter what she does to try and be happy, something goes wrong because there's no such thing as perfection.
I do love the scene where they're going over the new name and Max is trying so hard to like convince her, where he's like, "See, get it? MK2. It's Max and Katie 2, the second restaurant." And I'm just like, that's something I would like try to convince someone with, in all honesty.
Right. Yeah, it was really cheesy, but well written, right? Like that. Like if you ever had to convince a close friend or a partner about something and they're just looking at you skeptically the whole time.
Yeah, it's just like it's really cute, but also like kind of cringy in that like heart and like that kind of like charming way.
Yeah, totally.
So what were your thoughts on like towards like the later revisions before things go completely to shit? Things start getting just like weird. Like there's points where there's just skeletons walking around second, which I think was supposed to be a pun on the whole skeletons in your closet kind of thing.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, what ends up happening is like things would get really strange, but only to Katie. Everyone else, that's just how it's always been. Like when there's skeletons working in the restaurant, Katie ends up talking to what was his name? Chef Andrew, who is like her replacement in seconds and someone she was having like fooling around with early in the comic. He's just like, "What? They're skeletons. What's your problem? Like, they're working here. You're in the way. Get out." Right? Like, she's trying to freak out about this thing that makes no sense. And everyone else is like, "No, this is how it's always been. What are you talking about? Go away. Like, leave us alone."
Which is funny too, because then later on she talks to the owner of Seconds, and she's like, "What's up with all the skeletons?" He's like, "Well, you're the one that hired them."
And it's like, that's the thing that they kind of always remind you is that when she revises history, she's missing that information because it happens before she's there. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but like there's a reason for that. But at that moment, you're just assuming, oh, because she changed history. Technically, she experienced it, but because she wasn't conscious of it, she doesn't know what happened.
Yeah, because she makes that really sad like remark towards the revision before everything gets really bad, where she kind of has everything she wanted, but it's not what she wanted at the same time, where she basically says, "I have this perfect life, but I don't remember any of it."
Yeah.
Which is really sad when you think about it.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah. Like she has everything she's ever wanted, but she doesn't remember how she got any of it. And so it just is. And it makes like, it's this idea that even if you could have everything you wanted tomorrow, if you didn't do the work to get it, is it really worth it? Right. Like if I could be a famous podcaster with, $30 million and whatever else, but I don't know how I got there or those connections I made or whatever those friendships are at that level, like it's the cliche line of like, it's the journey, not the destination. It's really true, right? Like, sure, you want to be in this place and you want to get there, but like getting there is part of it.
No, 100%. So we've been alluding to the whole reasoning on why she can't remember. It's actually really kind of an interesting reveal when they get to it.
Yeah, we keep seeing this image of a tree with and at one point when we get a closer look at it, it's like basically meant to look like a kind of like a tree of life multiverse kind of thing. And there are little seconds on each branch, like these different versions of seconds. And what Katie comes to find out when she gets shunted into like this in-between space is that she is traveling to different universes and taking over Katie's position in that place. And in the wake of that, leaving other Katies behind in the fallout when she leaves with the same kind of lack of context. And so the reason she couldn't remember how she got to that place is because she was basically jumping into the place of a Katie who was already there, doing that work, living that life. And it becomes this, she's not changing time in a time travel sort of way, but she's jumping to a different timeline in a multiverse kind of way, which is pretty brilliant.
It's actually an interesting like twist on the whole idea of time travel, because time travel is one of those things that's really hard to do properly in any form of media, because depending on what your interpretation of time travel is, it becomes a confusing mess really quick.
Yeah, for sure.
I like this idea because this essentially is saying it's not actually time travel. She's just universe hopping, essentially.
Yeah. And the evil being that's born of the soil and the mushrooms is basically like some how I understood it was like the original version of her, like before she started to jump, that was the version of her that got left behind as she started to jump.
That was kind of my interpretation too, because at first when you see it begin to take form, it does look like a shadowy version of Katie, and I'm like, okay, so with this, I see we're going. At first, I thought it was kind of like her like darker side, kind of personifying, but then it kind of just the way the story goes. I'm like, no, that probably isn't it, because that just wouldn't make sense for this story. But then we find out it's this like demon creature, and I was like, oh, this went in a direction I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and she basically shares that like as you do this, you just abandon these other versions of yourself to live with the mess you've made because you've gone elsewhere, and that every one of these versions is a different version of her. And like this shadow creature is basically kind of like an amalgamation of those Katies left behind in the wake of her like timeline hopping.
I do. One of the scenes that was like super striking to me was there's the scene where one of the times she wakes up after a jump, it's completely just her apartment is just completely like desolate, and she looks out the window and it's just like this completely like disturbing image of just like giant skeletons walking around. It's like what is going on here? And it immediately cuts back to reality, and I was like, that was strange. Like,
yeah, showing that it wasn't just like these realistic things, but like what she was doing was also having these far-reaching supernatural consequences too.
No, 100%. So towards the once she finally makes that realization of like what she's done, she does eventually confront the shadow after like basically everything she cares about has been destroyed, because the final world she's in by that point is basically everything's just destroyed. All her friends have disappeared, and it's just her and this shadowy creature. And she basically has it's almost like a Persona 4 I am me, like I accept my inner shadow kind of moment, where she basically finally accepts her mistakes, and the shadow then just becomes a gothic version of her, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, and of course you compared this to Persona 4. It was bound to happen.
I mean, I can't help it sometimes, especially when it's like right there. But she basically finally comes to that realization where she's like, all right, understand I've made a huge mistake. And she tells the shadow, she builds a fire she basically brings the shadow back to Lucky's, and builds a fire and basically says, all right, I'm going to fix things, which is another interesting detail where every time she jumps, I noticed that like the area where Lucky's is gets progressively more and more decrepit.
Yeah. And then eventually, I think in one of the revisions, she ends up going with like the one where it was her and Max's restaurant. It's not even where Lucky's was. It was that other storefront that she was lamenting not buying in like a nicer neighborhood or whatever. And so like, yeah, it seems like no matter what she did to try and make quote unquote things better, the things she truly wanted kept getting worse, kept getting further away.
I always kind of took it too as like because she took the cauldron out of Lucky's, she took the spirit out of the building. And
Right.
because the spirit's gone, the building is just progressively getting worse and worse within each revision as its spirit is gone. Which I thought was an interesting metaphor because she kind of because the shadow represents her in a way, it's almost like she was the spirit of that building.
Right. As if like her buying it and wanting to revise it and like her love of cooking and wanting another restaurant is what like created the spirit there, gave it life and like revitalized it almost.
Mm. Now that's basically like kind of like where I thought it was going. And I did find it too very interesting. Like there's like that very blink it or miss it moment where when she's trying to hide the mushrooms from Liz, she has them in her car, and during like one of the revisions, like a bump happens and they all spill, but she forgets to pick up the one that's in there.
Yeah.
Which at first I thought was like, oh, that's an odd line that I kind of just immediately forgot about, not thinking about it. And then later on, when all the mushrooms are gone, it's like, well, how's she gonna get out of this? And then I'm like, oh right, there's the one mushroom still in the car.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like very fitting that the big resolution is she gives that final mushroom back to Liz as an apology.
Yep. And then when the timelines kind of write themselves, she wakes up. She also kind of like the foreshadowing of the earlier hospital trip. She wakes up in the hospital with first Arthur, her business partner, there, and then Hazel later. And like at the beginning of the comic, she's rushing Hazel to the hospital to take care of her, and now Hazel at the end of the comic is taking care of her, which is a nice like full circle moment.
I did love the line too where Katie's like, so why are you here? And she's like, because we're friends. Like, which was just a very sweet, like, kind of thing. Because early on, she was kind of like, because early in the story, like when she first encounters Hazel, she literally has no idea who she is.
Yeah.
Or she's like, thanks. Her like, my name's Hazel. She's like, right, you. Um, and then later on, now it's implied that they're friends, which is just such a nice like full circle thing.
Yeah, it kind of shows the endurance of friendships and why they're important, right? This person that she didn't care to know, there was an accident which brought them closer together, and then it endured throughout the mess of everything else that was happening.
It is a recurring thing too, because like early on, like she goes when she sees Hazel's not at the hospital during the first revision, she goes to Hazel's house
Yeah.
and talks to her grandmother, I think, or maybe her
Yeah.
mother. And she's like, goes to say, Hazel, one of your friends here. She's like, oh, we're not friends. And I'm just like that didn't seem necessary, but okay. But then by the end, they are truly friends, which is a very nice touch on everything.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines too is like when it's showing the new world that they've established. Like we see the name of the other chef is Matthew, right?
I believe it's Andrew, Chef Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah.
No, your name is Matt. That's
correct. It is.
Yeah, they show Andrew actually went to pursue his own career that he wanted, which was very nice. Katie had given him a good recommendation, and then we see the other chef is now in charge by default, which I thought was a funny little joke. They also mention one of my favorite cute lines is they show like where all the characters are now, and they show and they're like, and Hazel cut her hair. Katie cried about it for 3 days.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was just a funny line. Because there's that earlier scene where she goes, did you cut your hair? And Hazel's like, no.
Yeah, she like has it up or whatever, but she's like, did you cut your hair?
It's just a little funny thing. And then the final payoff is we get to see Lucky's as it is now, where in this perfect timeline where they finally made progress on it. It's actually getting closer to building.
Yeah.
and it's implied that she ended up making up with Max at one point.
Yeah. And like it also shows that this quote unquote perfect timeline isn't perfect. It's like it's what it should have been had she not meddled. Um and that there were ways to those things that she wanted without having to do time travel, time warp shenanigans.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's throughout this story, it's heavily implied that her big problem with Max was they didn't communicate, which is a common problem in relationships. Um, and by the end, they imply like they finally did communicate, and that's why they were able to make things work in the end, which is
Yeah,
very
the
nice.
thing I hate most in any like relationship drama is when if everything could be solved by the two characters just saying three words to each other, but instead they'd rather fight. Like that drives me bonkers because in real life relationships, you fight for sure, but if someone's not hearing you or won't listen, you try and connect with them, you try and reach out. And what I like about Bryan's writing is for the most part, it's never miscommunication unless the character purposefully isn't communicating. Like Katie here in this book or Scott in Scott Pilgrim, like they are purposely omitting stuff, like say dating someone else while you were still dating another person, or not telling the truth when you're doing timey-wimey shenanigans, right? Like it's never that they just can't talk to each other because they're like, their heart throbs and they're huffing. It's not that. It's literally someone's choosing to be an asshole and a terrible person, and it's literally ruining things, which is, I think, more purposeful. And where a lot of miscommunication happens is like if you're actively doing things to harm a relationship or not being honest or keeping things from people, which can happen, it's showing the consequences of that. Whereas if you are open and communicative and just reach out to the people you care about and share with them what's going on, what you need, where you are, like they'll just want to help. And like every time Katie did do it towards the end, like with Hazel especially, all Hazel wanted to do was help, even not remembering all of the things that Katie's talking about because she's a different Hazel from a different timeline.
Hmm.
She still wanted to help because she was a friend. They were friends, and she genuinely wanted to help her friend.
Hmm. I do love too that it showcases like things got better for pretty much every character just by naturally progressing. Like
Yeah.
they show Hazel's actually friends with her coworkers now, and all they had to do was just talk. Like big theme is communication.
Yeah, I mean the big theme is don't mess with the timeline, right? Like it's
Hmm.
like if you come by it honestly instead of trying, and not even don't mess with the timeline, it's more deception, right? A lot of Katie's timeline jumping shenanigans was deception, right? Like she wanted the easy way out. I don't want to
Yes.
face the consequences. I just want to take the easy road, and the easy road is never the good road. And so they showed the consequences of that under the veneer of like, what if you were timeline jumping and didn't have to do any of that work? And it turns out that's bad.
Yeah. No, it's such a sweet story. Like it has a beginning and an end, and the process of getting there is very all over the place, but it's very satisfying the way it kind of comes around full circle in the end.
Yeah, I like that. It feels very different from Scott Pilgrim in the sense that Scott Pilgrim is an ellipses, right? Like in the movie version, they walk off together to try dating. In the comic, we don't even know if they're going to do that. Like it's clear they want to try and be friends, but we don't know. Like I guess in the new video game coming out, we'll have some kind of sense of a sequel. I mean, technically there are answers in the animated show. I don't want to spoil that if folks haven't watched it because that is a whole other can of worms. But like Scott Pilgrim is basically a series of ellipses. Those series get some semblance of resolution, but not in the same way. It's kind of like a start to the next chapter, where this feels like a resolution. I hope this gets to be a movie someday, actually. I think, or an anime, maybe. I think it would be really good. It feels like a very complete story in the way that Scott Pilgrim clearly has left itself open to have sequels, like it's getting the sequel video game, and it got the sort of sequel, sort of retelling of the anime. And so I like this because this just feels complete. Now, if they made a sequel with a different character or something, like I could see this being an anthology, right? Like seconds could lead to minutes, and maybe minutes is like a law firm or something. Like I could see it like a different business, a different character, the same kind of like maybe timeline jumping things, or a different kind of mechanic to like changing time, right? Like I could see telling this kind of story in an anthology kind of way. But if that never happens and I don't need it to happen, I like that Seconds feels like a very complete story with a resolution.
Mm. I love the final page too, because it's literally just the dresser, and it's the simple line of "but she never saw another house spirit," and it just ends there.
Yeah.
It's just a nice. I love a subtle, ambiguous kind of ending like that, where it's like, this story's over, but you never know where it could go from here.
Right. There could always be something else.
Yeah. No, I was honestly pleasantly surprised by like this, like the entire way through.
Me too. I think that it's it's hard to say I like it better than Scott Pilgrim because they're very different. But like
Yeah.
it just proves to me that Bryan Lee O'Malley is easily one of my favorite graphic novelists. I'm definitely gonna go what is it? Lost at Sea is the first book
Yes.
that they did. Definitely gonna check that out. But like now they have me. Like any video game, movie, comic, whatever they do, I'm all in at this point.
I believe their next so currently I know they are writing the comic Snot Girl for Image Comics.
Yes.
They're not doing the art, they're just writing, which is interesting. I've been meaning to check that out once it gets a like a trade paperback.
Yeah.
Apparently they're currently working on something new called Worst World, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, so it's TBA. There's no release date, but it sounds like that's going to be their next like full length graphic novel.
I'm looking forward to that. Honestly, I get the fact that it's probably going to be a bit because Seconds took quite a bit to come out too, from what I've heard. I know Ryan was going through some personal issues at the time, which kind of bleed into a lot of the aspects of the story.
Yeah, it says in an interview in Entertainment Weekly, the citation, Bryan Lee O'Malley announced the graphic novel Worst World, which is the next graphic novel they're working on, but no details beyond that.
I look forward to that eventually.
Yeah.
I do gotta say though, I'm not a huge fan of this like slipcover, just because it doesn't cover the whole thing. And when you're reading it, it was like constantly sliding.
Oh, I took it off. Yeah, while I was reading and traveling with it, I was taking it to work. I just left the slipcover in my bookshelf because it was no fun. Yeah, I mean, and I do know that Bryan Lee O'Malley is writing and helping create the world for the new video game, which is being done by Tribute Games, which like have been on a fucking roll with beat 'em up games. I love their Ninja Turtles game. We have the Cosmic Invasion, I think, coming out this month or next month, which is their Marvel beat 'em up. And now this, I think the Scott Pilgrim game is sometime next year. There's no release date yet. And so I'm really excited for that. I don't know how in-depth the story will be in that, but I can't wait.
I'm just curious, have they said if it's based directly off of the original canon, or is it based off of what Takes Off tried to do?
They haven't said. We have no idea. We just know that it's warring factions in Canada, and like Scott Pilgrim and Ramona have a faction with currently Lucas Lee and Roxy Richter. I think the robots are a faction, and then there's one other, I forget which, but like it's like a turf war, it sounds like, but yeah, we don't know much more beyond that.
That sounds fun, in all honesty.
Yes, absolutely. It would be fun if like Katie or Max or someone is like a bonus character or a hidden character or something. That could be fun.
I would like to see something else done with Seconds. I'm not sure if it ever will happen. I mean, admittedly, I'm perfectly okay with this being what it is. Like,
yeah,
I would like to see something done with it though, because I honestly feel like it's kind of underrated.
Oh yeah, I don't really hear anybody talking about it now. I mean, Scott Pilgrim is a multimedia, not empire, because that makes it sound like it was incredibly successful, which it wasn't, at least initially. Like it sold well, but the movie tanked in theaters. It didn't do well until it got re-released on DVD and digital. And even then, it feels more like a cult classic than like a ubiquitously celebrated film, unless you're a deep Edgar Wright fan or comic fan. But it's just, there's more to it with the Netflix show. It's more well known now. And then, of course, you know, Bryan Lee O'Malley did a tour with Art Prince where I got to meet him, which was great. There's the original video game, the new video game, right? Seconds just has the book, which is a lot of graphic novels. But I would love to see something else with this. If not a video game, maybe some kind of movie or anime or TV show or something, because I think it could work in another medium. But I'm with you. If I never got anything else with it, I do love this book a lot, and it is up there as a favorite graphic novel, because I think it's a complete package that's done really well. And again, I think another reason I also want to get a trade of Snot Girl once there's one is I like Bryan's writing a lot. I like I like their animation style as well and their art style as well, but their writing is what brings me back to these books. And so I would love to read something else. And I've heard good things about Snot Girl, though I haven't read it yet.
Like, in all honesty, I'm just happy it exists.
Me too. Totally.
And I really need to read Lost at Sea at some point.
Yeah, same.
Because there is, I did get the special edition. It was re-released to like a nice hardcover version a while back. I did pick that up. I just have to actually sit down and read it.
Yeah, I don't own a copy of it yet, but it's on my short list of now things that I want to get.
No, 100%. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for Seconds. Any like other final things? Or
I just think if people really want a book that has heart and that is in the end feel good and is a slice of life book that has some really cool, interesting, still sci-fi stuff to say, I think it's really worth it. I think if you're a fan of Scott Pilgrim at all, you should read this book sight unseen. Like it's more of that vibe. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar vibe. And if you really like Scott Pilgrim, I think you'd like this too. I can't speak to Lost at Sea because I haven't read it, but I imagine that too. But for sure, this feels like a follow-up to Scott Pilgrim in the sense that it's got the same kind of vibes. And if you dug Scott Pilgrim in any form, TV show, movie, video game, comic, you would definitely like Seconds as well.
No, 100%. Yeah, a definite must read in my opinion. Fairly easy to find. I mean, it's on Amazon pretty much all the time. Probably at a local bookstore if you still have those. I know they're not the easiest thing to find these days.
Yeah, I'm grateful that we have 2 local bookshops near us in Brooklyn. So, and they are happy to order something for us so we can buy it from them. So that's been a godsend.
I'm in that weird like area of Connecticut where there's just Barnes and Nobles everywhere for some reason.
Terrible.
At least it's a bookstore.
That's fair. True. Totally true.
But yeah, Matt, thank you so much for joining me for this. This was really, I love talking like obscure stuff. Like, and I love my sister, but not everything I can talk to her about because we have different interests.
Sure.
So it's really fun to talk about just something different like that. I've been really wanting to check this book out for a while now, and it's been really fun chatting about it with you. Sorry, I can't talk right now.
All good. No, yeah, same. I'm glad that me doing a bit turned into an actual podcast episode. It gave me an excuse to read it as well, which I'd been putting off and loved it, and now I'm annoyed that it took so long. And yeah, I enjoy collaborating with you, Bill. We've worked on a bunch of stuff together, and I'll happily come back on the podcast to talk about something completely obscure that I needed an excuse to cover.
No, 100%. I'll try. Hopefully, then I can get Alex out of hiding. In all honesty, she's probably sleeping right now. So
I am bummed to not get to meet the infamous Alex, but I am honored to fill her very important shoes in this way to chat with you about this book. It was a good time. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining, Matt. Before we wrap up, I know you plugged your shows at the start. If you want to just give a quick, like, I guess second shout out at the end.
Sure. I mean, well, if you want to follow any of the stuff that I'm doing, you can go to djstormageddon.com. That has a link to both my podcasts, the Patreon for Fun and Games, my merch store, my Twitch page, my socials. If you're looking for socials to follow me on, the best are either djstormageddon.com, which is at Blue Sky. I have my URL there. And then, or Instagram is DJ_Stormageddon. Those are the best places to reach out. But otherwise, like I said, my link tree is got all the stuff that I'm working on, and you can go check all that stuff out.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to include those in the description of this episode. And Yeah, once again, guys, thank you for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. You can find the Gaming and Collecting Podcast on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. And be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. Awesome site featuring a whole bunch of other awesome podcasters, shows, friends, um, videos, all the fun stuff. We also do we do blogs every now and then. We're about to actually kick off our annual Spooktober, where a bunch of us will be covering different horror themed games for the month of October. I personally will be covering the extremely obscure Sega Dreamcast game Carrier. Oh boy.
I might also be doing an article for it this year, so you can keep an eye out for that. Yes.
Nice. I'm looking forward
Cooking
to
up
that.
something with Aaron, still figuring it out, but hoping to get that in before the end of October. So we'll see.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that. But anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all later.